The chaos erupted without warning. James said, "Why are they shouting my name?" He stood frozen in the shopping plaza, his children clutching his arms as strangers raised phones like weapons. Emily whispered, "Dad, what did you do?" But her small voice drowned under the echo of a hashtag flashing across giant digital billboards. Rumors twisted into truth before his eyes. Sarah, his wife, tried to steady him, her hands trembling as she pulled Lily closer. James said, "I swear, it's a lie." But the crowd cheered louder, their outrage burning hotter than reason. The headlines called him a monster, though no proof existed. He searched for familiar eyes in the crowd, but every face turned against him. A group laughed while recording, their fingers spreading the rumor further. Sarah said, "We need to go now," her voice breaking. Emily cried, "Make them stop, Dad." James stood powerless, a man crushed not by evidence, but by noise. The heartbreak cut deeper as Lily sobbed, clinging to Sarah's coat. His children watched their father erased in real time, a man condemned by whispers. James felt the ground vanish, replaced by a storm no truth could stop. The silence after the crowd's roar was unbearable. James said, "They don't even know me." Sarah urged, "Keep moving." Emily whispered, "Is it true?" James shook his head, his breath ragged. Lily clung to Sarah, her sobs muffled by the coat. He scanned faces, desperate for one shred of compassion, but every stranger looked away. Phones buzzed, more headlines appeared, sharper and crueler. His heart pounded, knowing innocence meant nothing. They found shelter in a quiet diner. James sat shaking, staring at his reflection in a coffee cup. Sarah said, "We can't hide forever." Emily whispered, "Why do they hate us?" Lily pressed her head against Sarah's side. James muttered, "Because lies are louder than truth." His voice cracked. The weight pressed down like stone. Sarah reached across the table, her hand trembling. James stared at it, unsure if he deserved to hold on. James scrolled through his phone, each headline sharper than knives. "Cancelled father, disgraced liar," words screamed at him. "But," Sarah said, "stop looking." He dropped the phone onto the table, his hands trembling. Emily whispered, "They don't know you." Lily asked softly, "Will it go away?" James exhaled a broken laugh, whispering, "No, not ever." The glow of the screen burned in his mind long after it went dark. Outside, the rain began. James stepped to the window, raindrops streaking neon reflections. He whispered, "I'm already gone." Sarah stood behind him, holding the children close. Emily said, "We'll stand with you." Lily whispered, "Don't let them take you." James pressed his forehead to the glass, shivering. He saw himself reflected beside strangers' hostile faces on screens, his image forever tied to lies. The storm outside mirrored the one inside, relentless and merciless. The diner felt like a fragile refuge, yet the silence inside was heavier than the storm outside. James said, "I used to believe respect was earned with hard work." Sarah whispered, "You still have us." Emily clutched her cup, her voice trembling. "But why does everyone hate you?" James reached for her hand, his palm shaking. Lily pressed closer to Sarah, her eyes wide and searching. James said, "Because people like stories more than truth." His voice cracked as if the words themselves were knives. Sarah tried to steady him, but her own fear slipped through her trembling lips. The family sat huddled together, fragile against the roar of a world that had already decided his fate. The headlines kept crawling across the TV in the corner. James lifted his gaze, each word cutting deeper. Father accused. Career destroyed. Sarah said, "Turn it off." The waitress lingered, eyes flicking nervously between them and the screen. James whispered, "Even strangers know me now, not for who I am but for what they say I am." Emily muttered, "It's not fair." Lily hid her face in Sarah's coat, whimpering softly. Sarah rubbed her back, her own eyes glistening. James gripped the table edge, his knuckles white, as though holding on could keep his life from shattering further. Outside, neon lights reflected off puddles, turning the night into a kaleidoscope of color. James pressed his hand to the window. "They don't see me," he murmured. Sarah said, "I see you." Emily whispered, "Me too." Lily clung to Sarah tighter, silent but present. James closed his eyes, a single tear streaking down his cheek. He whispered, "The hardest part isn't losing strangers. It's losing myself." The reflection of his face warped in the rain-streaked glass, fractured like the life he once knew. James remembered the past vividly. Birthday parties, laughter in the backyard, simple dinners filled with warmth. He said, "They erased years in a heartbeat." Sarah answered softly, "They can't erase us." Emily whispered, "I don't want to lose you." Lily whimpered, "Don't go away, Daddy." James pulled them closer, his body trembling. The world outside roared, but inside the booth, he clung to fragments of love, the only shield against the storm of lies. The waitress finally returned, placing the bill gently on the table. Her eyes flicked toward James, pity mixed with fear. James lowered his gaze. Sarah whispered, "We'll pay and leave quietly." Emily said, "Why are they afraid of us?" Lily pressed her face into Sarah's coat again, silent tears soaking the fabric. James said, "Because fear spreads faster than truth." His words hung heavy in the warm air, unanswered. The family stood, fragile silhouettes against the neon light, stepping back into the storm waiting outside. James tried to step back into work, but the office was colder than winter. Colleagues who once smiled now stared at the floor. He said, "I can explain," but no one met his eyes. The manager avoided him, shuffling papers nervously. Sarah had begged him not to go, but James whispered, "I need to try." His desk felt foreign, stripped of photos, emptied of warmth. Emily's drawing once pinned to the wall was gone. Lily's smile once taped near the monitor erased like it had never existed. James said, "They erased me here too." The silence screamed louder than the crowd outside. He clenched his fists, holding back tears, knowing he had been fired in spirit long before any letter arrived. By evening, the story had grown teeth sharper than truth. Neighbors watched from windows as James walked home. Sarah whispered, "Keep your head down." Emily clung to her school bag, her face pale. Lily asked, "Why are they staring?" James muttered, "Because they want to see us fall." A boy from across the street yelled cruel words. James flinched, but kept walking. Sarah tightened her grip on Lily. The family's home, once a place of peace, felt like a stage under hostile lights. Curtains twitched, whispers spread, and James felt the weight of 1,000 unseen judges pressing against his chest. At school the next day, Emily faced whispers sharper than knives. Girls giggled cruelly, their phones glowing with her father's face. Emily said, "That's not true," but her voice cracked. A teacher approached, offering no comfort, only silence. Emily whispered, "They hate us now." Sarah hugged her tightly after class, whispering, "You're not alone." James stood apart, guilt in his eyes heavier than any punishment. Lily clung to Sarah's side, sensing the pain though too young to understand. James said quietly, "They're punishing you for being my children." His voice carried a tremor of despair, each word pulling him deeper into the abyss. That night, their front door rattled with knocks that never came with faces. Anonymous letters slid under the door, cruel words written in ink. James picked one up, whispering, "Monsters hide behind paper." Sarah said, "Don't read them." Emily cried, "Why are they doing this?" Lily pressed her hands to her ears, blocking the sound. The house once filled with laughter, now echoed with fear. James stared at the locked door, whispering, "Even home isn't safe anymore." His shoulders sagged as he realized walls could not protect against a storm carried by whispers and screens. James turned on the TV, desperate for distraction, but there he was, his own face flashing across the screen, twisted into villainy. A reporter said words heavier than stones. Allegations continue to spread. James muttered, "They don't even care if it's true." Sarah covered her mouth, trembling. Emily whispered, "Why are they lying?" Lily asked, "Will it stop soon?" James pressed his fists into his knees, rage boiling beneath despair. He whispered, "No one fights for the truth when lies make better headlines." His family's reflection shimmered against the TV glass, trapped inside a world that never asked them to speak. James sat alone in the living room, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Sarah whispered, "You need to rest." James shook his head. "I need answers." His phone buzzed with a message from Daniel, once his closest friend. The words burned. "We should talk." James muttered, "Now he remembers me?" Sarah said softly, "He abandoned you when you needed him most." James stared at the screen, his hands trembling. Emily peeked from the doorway whispering, "Is he helping?" James didn't answer. Lily clung to Sarah's leg, sensing the storm in the silence. James whispered, "Maybe the betrayal runs closer than I thought." The next day, James met Daniel in a cafe. Daniel smiled too easily, his eyes sharp. James said, "You spread it, didn't you?" Daniel replied coolly, "I didn't need to. I just didn't deny it." James clenched his fists. "Why?" Daniel leaned back, sipping his coffee. "Because your fall gave me space to rise." James whispered, "You ruined me for ambition." Daniel smirked. "The world wanted a villain. I just let them choose you." James's chest tightened, his breath shallow. The betrayal was no longer rumor. It had a face, a name, a smile. James returned home shaken, his body trembling. Sarah asked, "What did he say?" James whispered, "He admitted it." Emily gasped, "He lied about you?" James nodded, his face hollow. Lily asked softly, "Why would he hurt us?" James whispered, "Because envy is louder than love." Sarah wrapped her arms around him, tears slipping down her cheeks. Emily said fiercely, "Then we tell the truth." James whispered, "Truth doesn't trend." He collapsed into the couch, his family holding him, while the weight of betrayal crushed his chest like stone. James opened his laptop, scrolling through old messages. He found Daniel's words, small hints hidden in past conversations. "You'll never stay at the top forever," one read. Another, "Your spotlight won't last." James whispered, "He planned this." Sarah said, "We can prove it." Emily asked, "Will people believe us?" James shook his head, "They only see what feeds their anger." Lily whispered, "But we believe you." James closed the laptop, whispering, "Sometimes that has to be enough." Yet his eyes flickered with a fragile fire, hope buried under ruin. The storm outside mirrored the storm inside. James whispered, "They crowned me guilty without trial." Sarah said, "Now we know the truth." Emily whispered, "So we fight back?" James looked at them, his lips trembling. "I don't know if truth can fight lies anymore." Lily asked softly, "Then what do we do?" James pulled them close, whispering, "We survive." Outside, thunder cracked across the sky, as if the world itself warned that the storm was far from over. The storm eased, but left silence heavier than thunder. James whispered, "The world feels colder." Sarah said softly, "We still breathe together." Emily clutched her cup, muttering, "They'll never stop." James pressed trembling fingers to his temple. Lily asked gently, "Do they still hate us?" James exhaled slowly. "Yes, but hate eventually burns itself out." His voice carried a fragile weight, as though each word broke. Sarah brushed his shoulder, whispering, "You are still my husband." Emily said, "You are still my father." Lily hugged Sarah tighter, whispering, "You're still ours." James closed his eyes, whispering, "That may be all that matters." The diner lights hummed above, fragile yet steady. Outside, neon glowed across wet pavement, reflections fractured like his heart. He whispered, "I thought I was gone, but you hold me here." Sarah kissed his temple. Emily whispered, "We'll build again." James nodded slowly, though despair still lingered. Yet hope flickered faintly, refusing death. The morning brought no comfort. Headlines rolled endlessly, harsher, colder. James whispered, "Every word feels like a stone." Sarah said, "Stop carrying them." Emily muttered, "They don't care about truth." Lily pressed into Sarah's coat, whispering, "Why are they so loud?" James answered, "Because noise drowns reason." He dropped his phone, hands shaking. Sarah whispered, "They cannot take us." James exhaled, "They already did." Emily's eyes welled, whispering, "Not completely." James stared at her, his chest tightening. Sarah placed her hand over his, whispering, "Love can anchor storms." He swallowed hard, whispering, "I don't know if I believe." Lily whispered, "We believe enough for you." The family sat trapped in shadows of a world that had no mercy. Yet within those shadows, a thread of defiance remained. James whispered, "Maybe survival is victory." Later, they stepped outside. Rain had washed streets clean, but left air heavy with judgment. James whispered, "Every step feels watched." Sarah pulled Lily close, whispering, "Then walk with us." Emily clutched her bag tighter, whispering, "People stare." James answered, "Let them." Neighbors shifted curtains, shadows moving like ghosts. James muttered, "They wait for me to fall." Sarah whispered, "Then don't give them the satisfaction." Emily's lips trembled, whispering, "But it hurts." James knelt to her, whispering, "Courage isn't painless." Lily whispered, "I'm scared." James kissed her forehead, whispering, "Me too, but we keep walking." The pavement gleamed, mirrors of fractured lights. Each step felt heavier than chains. Yet the family pressed forward, fragile silhouettes against neon storm. James whispered, "As long as we walk together, we are not erased." At night, the family gathered in silence. James whispered, "Our home feels like a cage." Sarah answered, "Then let it be a fortress." Emily asked, "Can we be safe here?" James exhaled, "Safe is gone, but love remains." Lily whispered, "I want laughter back." James' eyes filled, whispering, "So do I." Sarah pulled them close, whispering, "We will find it again." Letters still slid under the door, ink bleeding cruelty. James picked one, tore it apart, whispering, "This doesn't define me." Emily whispered, "Then who does?" James answered, "You." Lily whispered, "And Mommy too." James nodded, whispering, "You are my truth." Outside, rain tapped gently like broken applause. Inside, their arms tightened, fragile but unyielding. James whispered, "Lies can scream, but love whispers louder." The storm lingered, but James no longer crumbled. He whispered, "They crowned me guilty, but I rise in defiance." Sarah's arms wrapped around him, whispering, "You are not alone." Emily whispered fiercely, "We stand beside you." Lily pressed into his chest, whispering, "We'll hold you." James closed his eyes, whispering, "Then I will stand." Outside, thunder cracked, but inside their voices held stronger. James whispered, "The truth may never trend, but it survives in hearts." Sarah whispered, "And ours are still yours." Emily said, "They can't erase love." Lily whispered, "We won't let go." James felt breath return, fragile but real. He whispered, "Survival is not surrender, it is rebellion." The family huddled tight, fragile yet unbreakable. Outside, lightning tore sky apart, but inside, love bound them. The dawn rose pale and uncertain. James whispered, "Each sunrise feels like judgment." Sarah placed her hand on his, whispering, "It can also be renewal." Emily sipped her tea, muttering, "People still talk." James nodded, "They always will." Lily pressed her cheek against Sarah, whispering, "I just want quiet." James whispered, "Quiet will come in time." He looked outside at the empty street, once alive with hostile stares. His chest tightened, whispering, "Even silence feels sharp." Sarah answered, "Then sharpen into strength." Emily whispered, "But strength feels heavy." James said softly, "Strength is carrying weight without losing yourself." Lily asked, "Are we strong?" James whispered, "Yes, because we are still here." He closed his eyes, inhaling slow. Sarah whispered, "Survival itself is defiance." Emily whispered, "Then we already win." James nodded, fragile hope threading his silence. James stepped into the street later that morning. "Mouse," he whispered, "I can't hide forever." Sarah walked close, whispering, "You don't walk alone." Emily held her school bag, whispering, "They'll stare again." James answered, "Let them stare." Lily clutched Sarah's hand, whispering, "Will they shout?" James said, "Not today." Neighbors lingered behind curtains, but the air felt less heavy. James whispered, "Their silence is a surrender of sorts." Sarah whispered, "The world grows bored even with cruelty." Emily muttered, "But the scars remain." James nodded. "Scars remind us we survived." Lily whispered, "I don't like scars." James crouched, whispering, "Neither do I, but they prove we are still standing." He straightened, shoulders no longer bowed. Sarah whispered, "You look taller again." James exhaled, whispering, "Maybe I'm remembering myself." At school, whispers returned, but Emily stood taller. Girls giggled, phones glowing, yet Emily whispered, "That's not who my father is." Her voice cracked but did not falter. James stood near the gates, whispering, "She's braver than me." Sarah squeezed his hand, whispering, "She learned from you." Lily tugged at Sarah's coat, whispering, "Will they stop?" Sarah whispered, "In time." Emily emerged later, head high despite red eyes. She whispered, "I didn't run." James knelt, whispering, "You fought louder than lies." Emily trembled, whispering, "It still hurt." James embraced her, whispering, "Courage hurts, but it leaves fire behind." Lily whispered, "I'm proud of you, Emily." Sarah whispered, "We all are." Emily exhaled shakily, whispering, "Then maybe I can do it again." James smiled faintly, whispering, "You already won." That evening James sat with his laptop. "What?" he whispered. "The story still spreads, but maybe it no longer controls me." Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder, whispering, "Then close it." James hovered, then shut it firmly. Emily whispered, "You don't need their words." Lily whispered, "You only need ours." James whispered, "For the first time I believe you." He exhaled, heavy but lighter. Sarah whispered, "You never stopped being James." Emily said, "You never stopped being Dad." Lily whispered, "You never stopped being ours." James smiled faintly, whispering, "Then the world cannot erase me." Thunder rumbled outside, but inside the air was calm. Sarah whispered, "We choose what defines us." James whispered, "Then I choose this family." Emily whispered, "So do we." Lily whispered, "Always." The storm broke at last. Rain cleared, stars shimmered faintly through clouds. James whispered, "The world may never forgive, but I no longer beg it to." Sarah whispered, "Forgiveness isn't survival." Emily whispered, "Truth is survival." Lily whispered, "Love is survival." James embraced them, whispering, "Then we are stronger than lies." Their silhouettes framed the window, fragile yet luminous. James whispered, "They tried to erase me, but they only sharpened me." Sarah whispered, "They cannot break what still stands." Emily whispered, "And we still stand." Lily whispered, "Together." James closed his eyes, whispering, "That is enough." The world outside continued its noise, but inside silence belonged to them. Love became louder than rumor, steadier than storm, truer than screams. The night wrapped them not in fear, but in fragile peace, glowing with the quiet rebellion of survival. Weeks passed and the noise dulled. James whispered, "I no longer wake to shouting." Sarah answered softly, "The silence feels like healing." Emily whispered, "At school, they've stopped asking." James nodded, "They found someone new to feed on." Lily whispered, "Then we're safe?" James said, "Safe enough." He leaned against the window, watching a faint sunrise bleed across rooftops. Sarah whispered, "You've changed." James whispered, "I've learned storms don't last forever, even if skies stay scarred." Emily muttered, "But scars remind people." James answered, "Scars also remind us we survived." Lily pressed her head against Sarah's arm, whispering, "Then I like scars." James smiled faintly, whispering, "So do I." The room filled with fragile peace. Outside the world kept moving, but inside, time slowed into healing rhythms. Sarah whispered, "We are not erased, we are reborn." James whispered, "Yes, reborn in fire but alive." James returned to work cautiously. Colleagues avoided whispers, offering half smiles instead of glares. He whispered, "I feel invisible, but not hated." Sarah had urged him, "Take each step slow." Emily whispered, "Are they kinder now?" James said, "Not kinder, just quieter." Lily whispered, "That's better than shouting." He sat at his stripped desk, hands trembling, but this time no one turned away. James whispered, "Silence is strange, but I can breathe in it." His manager nodded once, distant but respectful. The air no longer screamed rejection, only cold neutrality. Sarah's words echoed, "Rebuild slowly, piece by piece." James whispered, "Even ruins can hold new walls." Emily whispered, "Then start building." Lily whispered, "We'll help you." He exhaled, steadying his hands on the desk, whispering, "Then maybe I can stay standing here." At school, Emily found her voice sharper. A group of children whispered, but she said firmly, "That's not true." Their silence lingered. James watched from a distance, whispering, "She's stronger than I ever was at her age." Sarah whispered, "Strength grows in shadows." Emily later whispered, "They didn't laugh this time." James hugged her, whispering, because truth carried weight when spoken without fear. Lily whispered, "I want to be brave like Emily." Sarah whispered, "You already are, in your own way." James whispered, "Bravery wears many faces, even quiet ones." Emily smiled faintly, whispering, "Maybe the world will hear us one day." James whispered, "Maybe it doesn't need to. We hear each other, and that's enough." Their laughter, fragile but real, returned faintly to hallways once filled only with whispers. That evening James lit a small candle on the dining table. He whispered, "Light feels different when you've known the dark." Sarah whispered, "It feels earned." Emily whispered, "Like laughter after tears." Lily whispered, "Like hugs after storms." James smiled faintly, whispering, "Exactly." They ate together quietly, no headlines flashing, no phones buzzing, no doors rattling. James whispered, "For once, silence is kind." Sarah reached across the table, whispering, "This is what survival builds. Moments." Emily whispered, "Then moments matter more than noise." Lily whispered, "Moments are forever." James whispered, "Forever lives here, in this room." Outside the city hummed, indifferent, but inside, warmth flickered steady. The storm no longer defined them. The candle did. James whispered, "We are still here, and that is victory." James stood at the window one final night, rain gone, stars shimmering faint. He whispered, "The world will always twist stories, but I no longer live in theirs." Sarah wrapped her arms around him, whispering, "You live in ours." Emily whispered, "And we tell the truth." Lily whispered, "And we keep you safe." James smiled, whispering, "Then I am whole again." He pressed his forehead to the glass, but this time his reflection looked back steady, not fractured. He whispered, "They tried to erase me, but love redrew me." Sarah whispered, "Then let this be our new beginning." Emily whispered, "A beginning built from scars, not erased by them." Lily whispered, "And with laughter again." James exhaled deeply, whispering, "Yes, laughter, truth, and us." The stars above shimmered brighter, as if the universe itself agreed.